Monday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports4CLE. Hope you had a great weekend. Thanks for joining us. Browns wrapped up the preseason, and it was not a great weekend for Cade York. Missed another a potential game-winning field goal. The Browns moved on from him, but as you could guess, the fan base not happy. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason with a sample of what the fans were saying.
Hi, Dave. I was just trying to think back in the day, but we haven't had a kicker since, I think, Phil Dawson. Cade, he kicks them long kicks where it has like a fade to it, and all he has to do for like a extra point is just straight down the middle. You don't have to be trying to hook to the left or hook to the right. However he uses his feet. Maybe it's the shoe. I don't know what it is, but I'm just really upset because it just seemed like every year for like the last 20 years, we can't get a kicker. There's something fictitious about that. Thanks for taking my call.
I see that the Browns traded for a running back, Patriots. Why don't they do something about the kicker? Can't go into the season with Cade York, who missed a field goal in every single preseason game this year, and expect him to be the man when the lights come on. I think it's time for him to either get some competition or go, because he could kick Stefanski right out of a job if he misses too many. Stefanski could lose his job. Let Andrew Berry know it's okay to not hit on every draft pick. We have never had no luck drafting kickers except for maybe Phil Dawson if he was drafted. I can't remember, but you can't take Cade York into the season expecting him to put you in a game-winning situation, expect him to win it for a championship-built roster. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Well, the Browns thinking along those same lines as they have released Cade York. The reason they do that, they have traded for Dustin Hopkins. So the Browns give the L.A. Chargers a 2025 seventh-round pick. They will be releasing Cade York. So what about Dustin Hopkins, the new kicker? It's his 10th year in the league. 85% accuracy on all field goals, 84.8. 15 of 30 on 50-plus yarders, but you see anything 49 and 81.8% better, 30 to 39, 93, 20 to 29, 98.1. 10th year in the league, he's 33 years old. He has kicked in inclement weather as before he was with the Chargers. The bulk of his career was with the Washington Redskins, Washington football team, now Washington Commanders. Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Tim, it's another indication it's win now mode for the Browns.
Yeah, and it's very much a what have you done for me lately type of move with Cade York. I mean, week one in Carolina when he hit that 58-yarder to win that game feels like a distant memory. You know, there was so much hype around him a year ago, and then, you know, from that missed extra point against the Jets in week two, you know, it seems like it's been downhill from there. The misses against Kansas City just kind of seemed like the final nail in the coffin. Kevin Stefanski really obviously yesterday did not commit to Cade York, pretty much saying, you know, we can't make everything's internal, but we think he's really talented. That's kind of code for, you know, they just didn't necessarily believe in him. And actions speak louder than words. You trading a seventh-round pick to get a guy in Dustin Hopkins, who not the greatest kicker, but certainly a solid veteran kicker. Even looking at his numbers, you know, almost 85% for his career. And looking at kicks inside 50 yards, just doing the quick math, it's about 90.2% inside 50 yards. So that's humongous, you know. To have a guy where when you get inside 50 yards, you got a pretty darn good shot to make a kick. I also saw a number out somewhere, I think it was like 16 of 18 on field goals inside 2 minutes, which we saw was a major problem with York the last two preseason games in Philly when he missed the two chances, and then again in Kansas City when we got the kick block. So it's just a move they had to make. You can't really have any questions going into week one, especially if you're playing the AFC North. Maybe if you were playing against teams like the Colts or the Texans or the Cardinals early on in the schedule, maybe you could try it and see one last time you can keep around with as foot-loaded as the schedule is. You have to eliminate almost all uncertainty, and that included Cade York, and getting a solid veteran in there to replace him in Dustin Hopkins, that was simply a must.
And really, the thing is, you want to know what you have in your field goal kicker inside of 50. 9 times out of 10, Dustin Hopkins has made the kicks. Browns also announced today that they made a couple of other roster moves. So they're waiving guard Michael Dunn. They are also putting Drew Forbes on the reserve non-football illness list and terminated the contract of Wes Martin. It's a pretty good indication that Nick Harris and Austin Whippler are probably making the team. It leaves only Bitonio and Teller as the true guards on the roster.
Yeah, and then that makes you kind of wonder what's happening next. Is another one coming in, off waivers? Is there somebody they like that already got cut that they're willing to move off of literally every backup guard they have to basically leave a spot open for somebody, because you're going to need a third guard. I don't know if Nick Harris or Luke Whippler could be those guys, just because they're smaller centers right now. Luke Whippler's the guy I thought would kind of need a redshirt year. He's only about 300 pounds, so maybe a year to gain a little strength was a smart move there. So, I mean, depth of guard matters, and ultimately, you can find a piece out there. I mean, they found Michael Dunn and kept him around for a few years, and it's a solid piece. It's tough to see him go, because I always thought, when he was in the game, he was pretty solid. Nothing spectacular, but a guy you can count on in a pinch to do something solid. So that tells me something very interesting. Whether it's, they're going to go out and get a guy. I don't know whether they're going to move Nick Harris or Luke Whippler to guard for the interim and keep the other one as the backup center at Ethan Posick. I guess we'll find out tomorrow at about 4:01. Yeah,
Alex Leatherwood, a former first-round pick, was released earlier. That's a name just to listen out for. All right, a bunch of roster moves yesterday, and one of them they placed Jakeem Grant Sr. on injured reserve as he ruptured his patella the first time he touched the ball in the opening kickoff. They waived Caleb Biggers, Cam Bright, Miller Forrestall, Heslop, a tackle, Nate Meters, Anthony Schwartz. They waived with an injury designation. They also waived wide receiver Jalen Wayne. Terminated the contracts of guard Colby Gossett and running back Jordan Wilkins. Touched the ball twice and fumbled twice. Now, the Browns apparently could have found their number 3 running back as the Browns made a trade yesterday, acquiring second-year pro Pierre Strong Jr. in exchange for offensive tackle Tyrone Wheatley, one of those spare parts on the offensive line. Take a look at the scouting report on Strong. He was out of South Dakota State. So 4.37 40 time. And a running back, NFL traits. They liked him. Smaller division it's the old 1AA, but a big play threat. 10 career rushing touchdowns over 50 plus. Bends and bursts through the line of scrimmage. Finds center of a rush lane. Avoids first level defenders. You can see all of the things. Rhythmic runner. He screams the style of running that the Browns like. Kevin Stefanski yesterday talked about the trade and what the Browns saw with Pierre Strong.
That was an opportunity that came our way, and feel good about adding Pierre, somebody that we've done a bunch of work on. We'll see how quickly we can get him up to speed. This is what happens, as you know, around this time and really throughout the season. You start to add players, and it's our job to ramp them up as quickly as possible so they can understand, our language, how we operate, so they can help us potentially down the line.
And again, that was a guy, the scouting report that we showed you had a 3rd-round grade. He was taken in the 4th round by the Patriots. The NFL comp to him, Tevin Coleman. I think they found their developmental back.
Yeah, he seems like a guy who can come in and have an impact pretty quickly as a backup to Nick Chubb. We also have to remember, with Jerome Ford having a hamstring issue, we're not even 100% sure if he's available week 1. But the thing with Pierre Strong that stood out to me, I'm looking right now at the Patriots depth chart or their stats from a year ago. They rushed 425 times last season. Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris combined for 226 of those carries. So just naturally not a lot of chances for Strong to really make an impact. And even looking at the athletic numbers, I compared him to Demetric Felton. When you look at relative athletic score, what Pierre Strong did in his draft cycle just blew away what Demetric Felton did. I mean, we're talking 4.37 40, to a 4.59 40, 3-cone time for Pierre Strong, sub 6, excuse me, which is really good, to 7.31. I mean, you go up and down that. Strong just looks like is simply just much more athletic than Demetric Felton is. And I think what this does potentially is it gives the Browns a more explosive backup threat behind Nick Chubb. Certainly, we know Jerome Ford's got plenty of speed. That's what he was drafted for. You suddenly go and what now they now have what they lost with Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson going elsewhere is now with Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong. You have two young, fast, intriguing backs behind Nick Chubb who have the ability to catch the ball in the backfield. So I'm curious, how they get deployed. I would imagine Strong gets a couple of looks pretty early just because the Browns have shown in the past that they don't want to wear Nick Chubb out too much. And Strong is really interesting. So I like the fit. I like the move there.
Yeah, and he has returned kicks some, limited kick return, so that's the other thing to keep an eye on. Some injury news. We mentioned earlier, Jakeem Grant will be out for the entire season, Torres patellar. Jordan Kanasic, really good special teams player. Knee injury, is going to miss multiple weeks. Denzel Ward is in the concussion protocol, and Marquise Goodwin, will come off the non-football injury list. Great news with Goodwin. Again, they're going to try to ramp him back up to football. Again, blood clots. You never know exactly how that's going to go. Are you concerned with Ward? That's a guy that's had a number of concussions.
Yeah, I believe this is number 4 in his career, so it's hard not to be concerned with that. I mean, we know obviously this is severity of concussions that we know. It's become more important, and we take them more seriously now than we have in the past. And as much as you want to be worried about, will Denzel Ward be able to play week 1? Certainly the extra week between now and week 1 will help. But 4 concussions, that's a lot, for any player, and you worry just, about his long-term health and everything like that. So hopefully for the Browns, it's okay. Hopefully it's something that, Ward can, recover before the week, before the game. And if he can't, you have to go in there with Martin Emerson, Greg Newsome, and hope you can cobble together some depth, whether it's Cameron Mitchell or AJ Green or somebody else, playing defense against Tyler Boyd, because you want to imagine Emerson and Newsome, they'll probably spend the bulk of their time on Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And when I've talked about the Browns matching it with the Bengals, it's because of those 3 corners against those 3 receivers. So, I mean, obviously the football aspect, losing Denzel Ward, him being back in the protocol is difficult, but I think it's tougher, that this is another time the concussion protocol. You just hope he's okay, and you hope that it doesn't have any long-term effects.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, love the show. 2 things. I feel so bad for Jakeem Grant, man. We signed him, and he's been hurt. Both times he's touched the field for the Browns. The first time he touches the field for the Browns last year, he gets hurt. This year, the first kickoff, he gets hurt. I feel bad for that guy. Second thing, when is somebody going to let Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski know that it's okay to miss on a draft pick? Because Cade York is a big miss. He's a miss. He's not that guy, and you're going to hinge him to your team. You have a championship competitive roster, and this guy's going to kick you out of the playoffs. He's going to kick you out of games. This guy isn't the guy. They need to do something because this kid when the light doesn't click when it's time for him to be the man. When you put him center stage, he folds. All right. Love the show. Go Browns. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Tim, they looked at it and said, tells you their belief is they can win now. If you're that concerned about a kicker, and you need to be, That's why you make that move with a 4th-round pick.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, going back to the narrative of Andrew Berry not cutting draft picks, already this season, in just the last few days, he's cut 2 of his own picks. Anthony Schwartz got cut yesterday, Cade York today. Even going back early in the preseason, Perrion Winfrey was cut. Last year, Richard LeCount, a 5th-round pick, was cut, and potentially there could be more, draft picks cut. I mean, there's an uncertainty whether Isaiah Thomas will make the team. Tony Fields is a question mark. Jordan Elliott, Harrison Bryant, Demetric Felton, plenty of Andrew Berry draft picks could be on the bubble as far as making this roster. And that's, I think, normal. Not every GM is going to hit on picks. And when you're talking about picks after the 2nd round, where you're talking late 3rd round picks, because I think we also have to mention about Anthony Schwartz, for example, 91st overall. That's a late 3rd round pick. I mean, that's almost in the compensatory area. Even the best GMs miss on those once in a while. The makes are the aberration. The hits are the aberration to the misses. And when you talk about Cade York, yeah, it's a 4th-round pick. Yeah, there may be players you can get, but the fact is he also won a football game with the 58-yard field goal. That's pretty solid value for a late 4th-round pick. Would have been, obviously, you're drafting and hoping he's the long-term kicker. So from that perspective, it didn't work out. But you'd almost, I think, me personally, when it comes to drafting, I'd almost rather swing for the fences. And if I miss, I miss. And it was a later pick, so you kind of move on from that. But again, moving on from, like you said, shows the Browns understand the urgency of starting the season off on the right foot, considering the schedule that they have, and you got to eliminate that question mark at kicker as best you can.
The other thing is you move on from draft picks as you get a more mature roster and you feel like you're competing. So I think they didn't move on from their draft picks because they felt like they were building their roster. Now that you put the quarterback in and you have him, it's time to go. This is from the Bleacher Report. Takeaways from Saturday's preseason games. Browns first-teamers impressed in Kansas City. It was Cleveland's defense that really shined, especially the new faces, even without Myles Garrett opposite him. Zadarius Smith was consistently in the Kansas City backfield. Safeties Rodney McLeod, Juan Thornhill, each intercepted passes, with Thornhill returning his 34 yards for a score. Loved what I saw from the Browns defense. Remember, Patrick Mahomes wasn't playing. Travis Kelce wasn't playing. But you can only go against the guys that the other team is putting out there. I liked what I saw from the defense and from the offense, for that matter.
Exactly. And I think, the important thing is if you're going against backups and you're the first teamers, you better dominate those backups. And by and large, that's what the Browns did on both sides of the football. Once Juan Thornhill had that interception, that pick six, it seemed like the offense kind of found itself. They scored 2 more touchdowns. And the defense, like I said, it was against backups. But if you're a first team for a team that's expected to contend for an AFC title, maybe a Super Bowl, you better be able to dominate backups. It doesn't matter who you're facing. You better be able to be really good. And that first team defense absolutely was. And then, the offense took a little bit of time to get going. The Jordan Wilkins fumble obviously was, very tough. Sean Watson had that 3rd down that he underthrew to Elijah Moore, but he came back from that after the Rodney McLeod interception, set him up a beautiful touchdown pass at David Njoku, probably one of his best throws I think we've seen since he came to Cleveland, to be honest. And then, another touchdown drive. It's good to see the offense kind of go into, this 2-week prep for week 1 on a high note, looking, getting some scores and showing some things. But, the defense looking as stout as it did, forcing 2 takeaways. I mean, if you're the Browns, you got to feel good about that, knowing that you got to be ready to go right off the bat and you got some momentum to start off with.
All right, this from CBSSports.com. Ranking the quarterbacks with the most proven 2023. Number 1, they go Russell Wilson. Number 2, Tua Tagovailoa. And number 3, Deshaun Watson. With Coach Kevin Stefanski on the hot seat, this feels like the year we'll learn whether Watson is still a top 10 talent or has, for whatever reason, truly become a shell of his former self. Everything is riding on his trajectory. Tim, I don't know if Kevin Stefanski's on the hot seat, but again, Cade York move tells me it's win now. They realize the roster is in place. They have the quarterback. The other thing about Watson, the play, I know the Njoku throw, that was a beautiful throw. The play that really had me going, that's what I expect, was the one where he scrambled out and found Amari Cooper, and Cooper was wide open. You're going to see that with Cooper, and you're going to see that with Elijah Moore a lot.
Yeah, that's the play you hope Deshaun Watson makes. That's what you bring him there for, to make. And, that's why you run those scramble drills that, the Browns should have probably been running a lot at training camp, is because you have a quarterback in Watson who's not going to give up on those plays because he's so mobile, because he's so athletic, and because, he's not always scrambling to run, scrambling to throw in certain situations as well. So you got to be alert at all times. But yeah, I kind of agree with you that right now, I don't know if I put Kevin Stefanski on the hot seat unless the season goes off the rails. And I mean off the rails with Watson healthy. If Deshaun Watson, if he only plays 2 games because he gets injured and he's out for the season, you can't put that, I don't think, on Kevin Stefanski. And you just kind of have to play out the season and go into 2024. But if Deshaun Watson's healthy, if he looks more like what we saw in 2022 when he was inconsistent, really did not look like himself more often than not, then you kind of have to move on from him. But what we see in the preseason is what we have to go on, and what we've seen is a more confident Deshaun Watson, that has shown more flashes of what he was in Houston. You talk about that throw to Amari Cooper. We also got to mention the first throw he had, which was a perfect seam pass to Donovan Peoples-Jones. Those are throws we didn't really see him make a whole lot, in the regular season in those 6 games. He just looks so much more confident right now. Maybe it takes another couple games to really get back to Houston form, to get back into regular season rhythm, having that preseason, having that regular season. But so the goal is, I would imagine by mid-October, that Deshaun Watson looks like Houston Deshaun Watson, and that's going to be on Kevin Stefanski to figure out how to make that work.
Yeah, and again, this offense will be tailored to him. You couldn't do that last year because Jacoby Brissett was going to play 11 games. Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, Mina Kimes on what she thinks of the Browns roster. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. Mina Kimes on what she sees on this Browns roster. This from the Mina Kimes Show.
I think the defining question for the Browns is, like, how good does Watson have to be to make, because the roster is so good. And we are betting on defensive performance or improvement rather under Jim Schwartz and with the additions you mentioned. And I think that's a bet, obviously. The Browns are kind of like Chargers Midwest in some ways, because they're just like the good on paper team, a little bit.
Yep.
Lucy with the football a little bit. But I do think that is totally feasible, especially because, like, the Browns, the players on defense have all been good at different times. And I think Jim Schwartz has also been good. So it's like you can point to all the different pieces and see how it comes together. But with Watson, who was just very, very bad last year, I think the question is, okay, if he is in that 15 to 20 range of quarterbacks, is that good enough? If he is in that 10 to 15 range, is it good enough? I think it's that is going to be, like, it's that middle bar. Like, I'm going to answer the question. I think 15 to 20 will not be good enough. I think 10 to 15 will be good enough. So I think that's going to really determine the outcome of this season, especially in such a challenging division.
And Tim, when you look at it, Nick Chubb's going to get a lot of work. And if he's in the 10 to 15 range, you're not going to give Nick Chubb quite as many carries if he's in the 15 to 20 range. He doesn't have to put up a lot of numbers. He has to be able to make the 2 or 3 plays that the game depends on.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that talent-wise is one of the more talented rosters in football. I don't think we can, I think we could be honest about that as one of the better rosters on paper in the NFL. And like Mina Kimes said, the Browns, like the Chargers, are a team that, looks great on paper, but it has to translate. We talked before last season how, 7-10 was I thought largely on the issues they had on defense and special teams. The defense looks like it's largely fixed, at least for the moment. We got to see how it plays out. Is the pass rush as good as we all think it's going to be? If it could be anywhere close to what the Eagles had last season with their 70 sacks, if they can get in the 40s, they can get in the 50s as far as sacks are concerned, then there's a lot to certainly like from a defensive perspective. But when it comes to Deshaun Watson and what he needs to do, if he's a top 11 to 15 quarterback this year, certainly they should make the playoffs. If he's Houston Deshaun Watson like we saw in 2020 or 2019, there's no reason this team can't win 11, maybe even 12 games if he's that good, because, again, the team around him is so good. So, there's that balance that, Watson doesn't have to be good, but if he's really good, that's a huge bonus, and that gets you a better chance to go where you think you need to go as a football team.
All right, this from Doug Poundaley. 3 defensive starters who stood out in the preseason finale. Number 1, Juan Thornhill. Yeah, pick 6 will do that. Number 2, Martin Emerson. And number 3, the Browns' defensive line. Thornhill gives them a presence in the middle of the field they just didn't have. They haven't had in a long time. And the defensive line, you can see that this defense has an identity already.
Yeah, starting with Juan Thornhill, that pick 6. We haven't seen many Browns defensive players break on the football the way that Juan Thornhill did on that pick 6. It was decisive. He knew he had a good idea what was coming, jumped the route, and took that ball in full stride and was on his way to the end zone. And that's what you signed him for, to get a true ball hawking safety that this defense really didn't even have even last season. So I think, he with Grant Delpit is a good compliment. Martin Emerson, that hit that set up that other interception by Rodney McLeod. There's a reason, the stock of Martin Emerson continues to go up heading into year 2. The idea that, he could potentially sneak his way into Pro Bowl conversation certainly is a possibility. He's got the size. He was great last season as a rookie. The only thing he didn't do was intercept the football. You would imagine with a better defensive line, those picks are coming. And speaking of defensive line, even though Myles Garrett didn't play in that game, they create a lot of pressure. I'm sure by now everybody's seen, that viral clip of Zadarius Smith pancaking the one Chiefs right tackle, on that, bull rush. The quarterbacks had to get the football out, so it ultimately didn't matter. But, that kind of rush from your number 2 defensive end tells you that, that there's a lot there to work with. Myles Garrett, certainly we all know what he can do. He's going to be turned loose week 1, and now he's got help where he's not going to be he should not be double teamed nearly as much as he was in the past several seasons.
What stood out to you in that final preseason game with the Chiefs?
I think what stood out to me was kind of something I thought, this is a little smaller, but why they ended up trading for Pierre Strong a day later was because the number 3 running back was just not on this roster. We've seen all preseason, Demetric Felton, John Kelly Jr., and Jordan Wilkins have all had their moments to try and seize the job, and none of them did. We remember in the Philly game, John Kelly lost that fumble inside the 5-yard line, something that absolutely cannot happen under any circumstances. Jordan Wilkins had back-to-back missed exchanges with Deshaun Watson, one of which that became a Chiefs field goal. And then, Demetric Felton, fine, but nothing special. If you're out there going for a job, you need to make an impact. You need to show the coaches that, they under no circumstances can afford to let you go. And I felt like none of those guys did that. And the fact that they traded for Pierre Strong a day later is pretty much is proof of that. Whether they go out and get another running back in the next couple days or keep Demetric Felton potentially because of what's going on with Jerome Ford, we'll see. But I thought that was the thing that stood out. It was a last chance for those guys to take that job. Jordan Wilkins in particular, who I thought was an interesting, pickup late in training camp, but you can't have those 2 fumbles on exchanges because, if you fumble 30 yards down the field, that's whatever. But you cannot have those problems getting the football in your own backfield. It just simply cannot happen at the NFL level.
So Anthony Walker, Sione Takitaki, Kevin Stefanski said he expects them to be ready to go week 1. What areas do you think, if any, that Andrew Berry might be looking to upgrade still back half of the roster as we get cut down days, less than 24 hours away now?
I think corner and linebacker really interest me because, we've seen injuries a couple places. I mean, Jordan Kanashik, he got injured in that Chiefs game. He could miss a few weeks. Denzel Ward with the concussion, what happens there? How much time does he miss? Does he even miss a game, or does he end up missing multiple games? Because again, 4th time in the concussion protocol for Denzel Ward. So that's certainly concerning. Now, the Browns certainly have depth at that room with Emerson, with Newsome, with Cameron Mitchell they just drafted. AJ Green's a guy I kind of like there. But Mike Ford, a guy they got as a special teamer, but do they need to get another guy just to get him through the first couple weeks until Denzel can come back, potentially, depending on how long that is? Because we know with concussion protocol, there's no specific set timeline. So how long, I think we'll know how long maybe they expect Ward to be out for, depending on who they keep at that position. And linebacker, obviously with Taki and Walker potentially coming back, as early as week 1, that's very good news. But, I think that linebacker position is going to be pretty important, just to get another good body in there, get another guy who can, play in a certain situation and pretty much be a reliable backup to the guys that are out there. Mohamed Diabate certainly to me looks like he should get a roster spot, but maybe another veteran out there, just to make sure you're not throwing those guys out there, that are coming back off injury too early might be a smart idea. Just again, to buy those guys time so you're not rushing them out of the rehab, that they're too early to play. One of those situations is essentially just to protect those guys and make sure that when they're ready to go, that they're 100% ready to go, or as close to 100%.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
Tim Bielik, Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Check him out. Always really good stuff. We will continue talking Browns. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports for CLE. All right, DraftKings has the Browns over-under win total at 9.5. Chris Sims from NBC Sports, Chris Sims unbuttoned on if he thinks the Browns will be over or under that 9.5 wins.
New brand of football, right? It sounds like they want to throw the ball, justify Deshaun Watson's contract. New defensive coordinator on that side of the ball. I'm going to go under here. I am. I don't, they're scary. I know that. And, of course, if Deshaun Watson is, back to what he is, he's a game changer. And maybe that'll change some of these things here. But the Browns, I think, are one of those where, like we've said, I got to see a little bit to believe it. I got to see what this offense is going to look like. What are they going to do? I have a bad feeling they're going to err on throwing the ball too much just to justify the contract. And then the defense with Schwartz, and like we talked about, are there enough difference makers? I just don't know. I don't know about that yet either. And they have a pretty tough start of their season to where, I'm not going to just anoint them, right? Like, the Bengals week 1, at Pittsburgh week 2. That's his even showdown, and it's at Pittsburgh, And then, I have respect for the Titans, and then it's the Ravens, and that's the 49ers. I mean, so there's some things here to where if they're going through growing pains, it's going to be more pains than growing.
Let's welcome in Jon Macri from Pro Football Focus, co-host of the Pro Football Focus Football Fantasy Podcast. John, I don't think they're going to throw the ball to try to justify Deshaun Watson's contract. I think they're going to throw the ball because they think it's a better way to attack a defense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It is obviously more efficient to throw the ball. We've found on the offensive side of things, but when you have a running back like Nick Chubb, you don't go away from that either, right? He's been one of the most efficient running backs in the NFL since he entered the league. So I think he's still very much going to be a big part of their game plan. I don't know that Kevin Stefanski is going to do this drastic shift in offense, but I could see more passing, but I don't think they'll be among the league leaders in that category, for example.
Yeah, and I know we've talked before. Nick Chubb's really talented running back. You would think if you're doing 3 wide receiver sets and you're spreading it out, that just makes him more effective running. Kevin Stefanski likes running the football.
Yeah, he's shown that, right? And I think, even with Kareem Hunt out of the picture, who was more of a receiving back anyways, but he got his carries as well. They brought in Pierre Strong this past week as well to kind of bolster up that room a little bit with Jerome Ford not fully healthy. So I do still very much think it's going to be the mindset is going to be to run the ball in Cleveland more than anything. So I'm not too concerned that the offense is going to have a drastic shift and it's going to backfire on them in any means. I do think there will be an improvement this year, but I think it's going to come from everybody and not just Deshaun Watson.
What are you thinking? Over or under 9.5 wins? Do you think they get to 10 wins? It's tough. I know
that's tough. Yeah. It's a really good number, 9.5. Vegas never makes it hard, or makes it easy on us, right? That's what they do, but it's super close. I tend to lean under here, but I lean under with kind of a silver lining in that I think they could be a much better team this year, show noticeable improvement, which is the main thing. But maybe that doesn't show up as much in the win-loss column overall. But I do think this team could be very much improved and still not hit that over. So that feels like the most likely scenario for me. And I hate saying it because I do like what they did on defense as well. I really do love it. And I could feel all of Cleveland booing me right now, and I apologize.
Well, you got to go with what you feel there. All right, this is from CBSSports.com. Deshaun Watson's career throwing distances. So average pass length from 2017 to 2020, 9.5. That was 5th in the NFL. Last year, 7.1, 25th in the NFL. Percentage of passes, 21-plus yards in the air. And from 2017 to 2020, that's the time when he was in Houston. 12%, 7th in the NFL. 2023, 6%, 33rd in the NFL. What this screams to me isn't, boy, Deshaun Watson was rusty. It was, boy, Deshaun Watson wasn't playing in an offense that was tailored to him. It was tailored to another quarterback, Jacoby Brissett.
Right. Yeah. Last year, really, it feels more so far from the norm for Deshaun Watson that it looks more like an outlier than anything for him in his career than necessarily the new norm for him, right? I mean, even his passing grade last year, 51.6, was a career low. It was 39th in the NFL, but a big difference from what we saw from him in 2020 when he posted a 91.1 passing grade, which was 3rd best in the NFL. So we know he's capable of that. Obviously, last season, kind of a write-off with him coming in late after the suspension and everything like that, but I think there's still that potential for him to get back to that elite level. But I don't think we could judge him on 2022 because it was such a small sample size. And it just more of an outlier than anything after being away from football for so long.
So we've seen Brian Boldinger break down some offensive linemen on this show. Now let's take a look. He's going to do a little bit of a breakdown on Cedric Tillman, the Browns rookie from the Chiefs game.
All right, Cleveland Browns, here we go. DeJuan Jones, the right tackle, been outstanding in 4 preseason games. Here's Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who's going to take this shot from Charles Omenihu right to the solar plexus. And into your picture is Cedric Tillman. Like big, smooth, fast, strong, takes 6 Chiefs to get him to the ground. When you watch Dorian Thompson-Robinson, DTR, make this throw, I swear I think Cedric Tillman is skywalking. You watch him take off here. Like, is this Paul Warfield? Who is this? Like, dancing right through the Chiefs, all their defense, taking 6 of them to get them down to the ground, skywalking through Arrowhead Stadium. This looks like a pretty good rookie class to me.
Yeah, and John, when you look at that, he looks like a tight end. He's built like a tight end.
Yeah, he's massive. He's got a really good frame, and it could be an absolute weapon as a receiver. I know he worked more with the second unit this last preseason game behind the obvious starters, the Amari Coopers, Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, but there's a chance for him to move up that depth chart if he keeps doing stuff like that, because he does look impressive and really, really interesting rookie wide receiver here.
Before we go to break, Pro Football Focus team of the 2023 preseason. So the flex player we have Austin Watkins, wide receiver, center Luke Whippler, and punter Corey Bojorquez. Take us through those and what you have seen from those 3 players for the Browns.
Yeah, Austin Watkins was really interesting. I think he flashed a lot in through those first 3 preseason games. Didn't get as involved in the last game, but earned a 77.3 receiving grade this preseason. Had 2 touchdowns, 257 receiving yards. Looked really good. Looks to maybe be wide receiver 6 on the depth chart right now. So I know we haven't seen Marquise Goodwin play, so I think it'll depend maybe if the Browns are going to keep 6 or 7 wide receivers on the roster. But really liked what we saw from him. Luke Whippler was really interesting as well. He was amazing in pass protection through the first 3 preseason games, where he was mostly playing at center, but played exclusively at right guard this last preseason game, which he did some of the other games, but was mostly center. He did allow more pressure at right guard. The good thing, the Browns have like probably the best guard tandem in the NFL, so not too much of a concern there, but proved that he could be a very capable backup center. It should something happen with the starter there. And Corey Bojorquez looked amazing. He had 2 cannons from their own 30s. I think it was against Washington, where he pinned them inside their own 15-yard line. I think it's kind of an underrated thing to have like a truly great punter as one of these middle tier teams where they can maybe help you win some of the field position battle in so many crucial games. So Corey Bojorquez looked great. He still has an absolute cannon for a leg, so he's earned his grade and make it the team of the week there.
Jon Macri from Pro Football Focus and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Take a look at an interesting fact with Pierre Strong as well. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Jon Macri from Pro Football Focus, co-host of the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is James Seiler from Wadsworth, Ohio. I can't resist this. I wanted to put it out there now with the Browns trade for Pierre Strong. their roster depth is what I think it's going to be at the running back position. This just goes to prove that Nick Chubb's Ford strong. Thank you.
All right. As always, appreciate all the voicemails. John, what about it? When you look at that running back room now, what do you think?
I mean, I think you have three obviously capable starters. Capable is an understatement for Nick Chubb, obviously, but Jerome Ford, he hasn't been healthy. Pierce Strong, solid running back. He didn't have like the best receiving game, even though he was used that way a little bit in college. So I don't know that he'll necessarily eat into those touches the way that Kareem Hunt did for Nick Chubb in years past. So I think it's still very much going to lean on Nick Chubb. We'll see what happens when Ford gets back in the lineup as well. But for, if anything, this just points more towards a Nick Chubb workhorse role, and then with capable options to kind of back him up. So I like the trade there, and I think it was a nice addition for the Browns running back room.
Yeah, and the other thing is one of the things that it was pretty evident the Browns were looking to add in the offseason was speed, and Pierre Strong. 4.375. So take a look. These are the guys that they've added. 4.37 for Pierre Strong. Marquise Goodwin, who off the non-football injury list. 4.27. Elijah Moore, 4.32. Those are guys that can threaten the defense with speed. And Strong is a guy, second year, so it's the developmental back you've been looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's nice to see too, right? Especially like you mentioned with Marquise Brown being injured as well. I think there was potential maybe that he would work in some of the punt or kick return duties in some way. So I wonder maybe if Pierre Strong can get some snaps that way as well and contribute on special teams with that speed. So yeah, it's nice to have these kind of guys that they were decent draft picks, and now all of a sudden they get another chance early on in their career within that rookie contract. So there's opportunity there for Strong depending on how they want to use it. But yeah, like you said, the talent, the speed is definitely a nice weapon to have, and even as a change of pace back to give Nick Chubb a breather as well.
Yeah, the other thing is when you talk about Goodwin and Moore and Strong, they can threaten. Defenses will play off. That will give you some easy yards, and those were things Browns just didn't have last year.
Yeah, they've improved pretty much across the board, right? And so they've added more weapons to the team, to the offense. And I know Chris Sims wasn't overly enthusiastic about the defense, but I think there's some defensive weapons there that they added as well. So I'm probably a little bit more optimistic, even though I'm not betting the over on the win total. I think that, everything that they've done this offseason points to an improved team overall.
Yeah, I kind of think it's over. I think 10, 11. I wouldn't go any higher than that because it is the division's brutal, and the AFC in general is brutal. All right, this from the Bleacher Report. Bold predictions for Browns individual stat leaders for 2023. Nick Chubb will again set a career high in rushing yards. The prediction here, 1,574 yards. Myles Garrett will set career high in sacks. Garrett finishes with 17.5 sacks, and Denzel Ward will nab at least 4 interceptions. I don't think any of those are out of the realm of possibility because they're going to run Nick Chubb quite a bit. I don't know if he'll get as many touches as he did, but they're not getting away from Nick Chubb.
Yeah, the Nick Chubb one, I think the 1,500-yard mark, I think to hit that again this year makes a lot of sense. If I put my own bold prediction in there, I'll say he sets a career high in receiving yards as well. I think he's going to eat a lot of those, or absorb a lot of those receiving touches that Kareem Hunt had. And I think if they do increase their passing, like some people expect them to, Nick Chubb's going to be on the field a lot. He's going to get a lot of those touches as well. So I think that makes perfect sense. And I mean, Myles Garrett for sure. I think 17.5 sacks, not out of the realm of possibilities for him. I think he can hit that, but I'd also say Zadarius Smith, if I had to create my own bold prediction, Zadarius Smith also hits double-digit sacks and maybe gives the Browns their first 2 players to have double-digit sacks on the roster since I don't know when. I mean, not since Myles Garrett was drafted, probably not in the last 2 decades, maybe. I have to look it up, but it's been a long time since that's happened.
I'll put this out there. I think Okoronkwo could end up getting double digits. The one thing is they're going to just get after it. So there's going to be opportunities there.
Yeah, Okoronkwo is a really capable pass rusher as well. And look, if they, on third downs and obvious passing downs, if they're able to kick Zadarius Smith inside, have Okoronkwo on the edge, now all of a sudden you have three truly elite weapons rushing the passer and potentially getting that production that they just haven't had. I think last year, the second ranked player on the team in sacks was Taven Bryan, maybe with three.
Yeah.
So there's a big production hole there that can be filled with these guys.
All right, before we head to break, most yards per carry in the 2022 season, minimum of 100 attempts. Khalil Herbert of the Bears, 5.7. That surprised me a little bit. Aaron Jones was second. Tony Pollard. Travis Etienne was fourth at 5.1. Nick Chubb and Ramondre Stevenson, 5.0 per carry. What that doesn't say is Nick Chubb has done that every year, running against stacked boxes. I think he's going to have a career high in yards per attempt. His average is going to be a career high, and it might be closer to 6. How's that for a bold prediction?
Yeah. That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, he's amazing, right? I mean, and if you increase that minimum carry threshold even higher too, he'd be the only player on the list because he's unbelievable in everything he does. I mean, he's the most elusive running back in the NFL as well. I mean, he's the only running back over the past 2 years with at least 200 carries to rank inside the top 3 at his position in both missed tackles forced per attempt and yards after contact per attempt since 2021. So he's shown no signs of slowing down. I wouldn't bet against Nick Chubb in any rushing category.
Jon Macri from Pro Football Focus and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Pro Football Focus's Jon Macri. He is the co-host of Pro Football Focus's Fantasy Football Podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, Dave. Howard from Marin County. A couple thoughts about the game against the Chiefs. Number one, I think their running back position's in trouble. Boy, we need help there. Number two, Cade York. Boy, he's a head case. I was looking at the trajectory of the ball when he kicks it versus Harrison Butker, and there's a really big difference. We need a new kicker desperately. I think Deshaun Watson was definitely better than he was last year, but he's still a little off. The ball is still a little off, but it is extremely entertaining to watch him scramble and find someone and throw the ball. And finally, DTR is human. He looked like a rookie in his last game. Great show. Thanks a lot, Dave. Take care.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. John, the running back position only needs help if Nick Chubb gets hurt. Then it needs a lot of help.
Yeah, that's the main thing, right? You're not going to find a Nick Chubb level replacement off the street or in most NFL teams or on their rosters, but there will be some surprise cuts, I think, this before tomorrow's deadline, and you know, maybe some running backs who are maybe a little bit more experienced or capable come into play for the Browns backfield. But yeah, I don't think you have to worry about it too much as long as Nick Chubb is healthy. Kareem Hunt is still a free agent if they ever wanted to go back to him and something happened to Chubb. He's been a very good running back as well. So yeah, hopefully Nick Chubb just stays healthy.
And Dorian Thompson-Robinson, again, he looks great. Remember, he's a rookie. I wouldn't expect too much of him if you have to go to him.
Yeah, I think, he showed enough this preseason. I know his kind of worst game came in the last game, so the most recent sample isn't as promising, but I think he's still flashed a ton of potential. Obviously, the coaching staff feels comfortable with him, obviously moving on from Josh Dobbs, from what they've seen from Dorian Thompson-Robinson every day in practice as well. I think that's encouraging, that they feel comfortable going into the season with him as their QB2 as the way things stand right now. And there's definitely potential there. But yeah, you kind of have to set expectations with a lower bar as a rookie quarterback in the NFL for sure.
All right, Mike Golick Jr. on what he sees as the potential for the 2023 Browns. Again, this from the Mina Kimes Show.
That division is going to be incredibly hyper competitive. We've talked about the roster they've built up around the offense, some of the changes they're going to absorb this year and trying to cater to what Deshaun Watson wants to do. Defensively, they decided to try and bring in a bunch of big old boys in the middle to try and help them from being atrocious against the run like they were last year. My man Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is wearing a single-digit number now, so the league is on notice. That's a terrifying force. He's 6, so went from 28 to 6, which huge jump up in quality there. Love to see that for him personally. But and listen, I know this is all a bet on, can Deshaun Watson regain form? We haven't seen a lot of indicators that that's going to be the case. That is my chief worry here, but there are so many other parts of this roster that if the quarterback gets back to being an above average top half of the league, and I know that's a difficult conversation for a lot of reasons, but from a purely football standpoint, if that happens, I think this roster can actually, to your point, win a playoff game.
John, what about it? How good does Deshaun Watson have to be? People who have watched the show probably are sick of hearing what I have to think. So how good do you think Deshaun Watson has to be for the Browns to be a playoff team?
I think for Watson, I would aim to be in that top 12, top 10 of the NFL in passing as a quarterback. I think that's going to be important for him. I mean, you can't. He didn't show it last year, right? Like I said, more of an outlier year, it felt like, than anything. I don't think he needs to be that top 3 like he was the last year that we saw him in Houston, but showing more towards that top 10 range could definitely boost them enough to make it into the playoffs and win some of these tough division games, which is going to be more important than anything, because like we've been talking about, the AFC North is stacked, and none of those games are going to be easy. So stealing, 3 to 4 of those games on the year and winning those winnable games that they have on their schedule could make all the difference in the world.
Say he does get into that top 5 range. What does that do for the Browns and for this team?
I mean, that's massive, right? Now all of a sudden you have a top 5 quarterback, you have a top 5 running back, you got a really good receiving core with Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore. If he can become something, one of the best offensive lines in the league, Myles Garrett, arguably the best edge defender in the league, with some really good talent on that defense. Now we're talking about winning playoff games, right? Because that makes all the difference in the world with the talent around him. The quarterback position is just so crucial. You have to, to win playoff games and to make it far in the playoffs, you need everything clicking, and it starts at the quarterback position. So that would be massive for them, obviously.
All right, before I let you go, it was interesting to take a look at this. This is from Jack Duffin, Orange and Brown Report, comparing John Dorsey's 2019 starters to Andrew Berry's 2023 starters. We'll start on offense. So you go from Mayfield to Watson. Chubb is the same. Odell Beckham Jr. to Cooper. Jarvis Landry to Elijah Moore, Higgins to DPJ, and Njoku is the same. Robinson to Wills, Bitonio's the same, Treader to Posick, Cush to Teller, Hubbard to Conklin. You look at that, the offensive line has been upgraded substantially, and the quarterback position, in theory, if you get the Watson that you think you're getting, has been upgraded substantially.
Yeah, that's huge, right? That's everything. And obviously that offensive line, we've seen them do damage. And obviously with Nick Chubb in combination, we keep talking about Nick Chubb, but in combination with that offensive line just makes him all the more dangerous. And obviously keeping Deshaun Watson clean is going to be important as well. We've seen him make some nice throws in this preseason, or at least the last preseason game, by having a clean pocket to throw to, specifically that touchdown to David Njoku, right? Where he had a nice pocket and he was able to throw the ball accurately with nice touch and put it in a perfect spot for Njoku to bring in the touchdown. I thought that was his best throw of this preseason, of course, but specifically encouraging signs there. So I agree with the upgrade for sure.
All right, John, before we let you go, here's the defense. So Garrett's the same, Olivier Vernon to Zadarius Smith, Richardson to Tomlinson, Ogunjobi to Harris, Schobert to Walker, Kirksey to JOK, Ward's the same, Greedy Williams to Newsome, Carey to Emerson, Randall to Thornhill, and Burnett to McLeod. That defense is hugely upgraded from 2019 to 2023.
That's a huge difference. That even from last year, right? Just filling the interior hole of that defensive line is probably one of my favorite things that they've done this year. I've talked about this before, but Dalvin Tomlinson specifically, I think somebody that most people view as this run-stuffing defensive tackle, and he is to an extent, but he's also steadily improved as a pass rusher every year that he's been in the league, including a career-high 79.1 pass rush grade just last year, which ranked 11th among all defensive tackles. I know we only had 3 sacks, but sacks aren't everything. Being able to win at the line of scrimmage and disrupt plays consistently, create pressure, get to the quarterback, and get him out of rhythm is just as valuable. So I love what he brings to the table. Easily one of my favorite signings of the entire offseason. I really like what they've done with their defense here.
Jon Macri, Pro Football Focus, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, John.
Oh, I appreciate you having me. Thanks again, Dave.
All right, Jon Macri, make sure you check him out, Pro Football Focus, co-host PFF's Fantasy Football Podcast. Always good stuff. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.